day 4 of 30 Days to Greatness. Today we're talking about sellers 101-1, the starting point. Hey, how's this going for you? It's a shift, isn't it? It's why I liken it to boot camp or training camp for athletes. It's really meant to be an immersion, to find time every day to work on your business and put in some work and earn that sufficiency and that proficiency and to learn the basics and get it up and running. Well, good for you. Good on you. You made it this far. You're still going. 26 more days after this. It's actually a little secret here. I call it 30 Days to Greatness, but it's really only something like 28 days. So probably more like 24 to go. But listen, when we're working with sellers, it's working with any client, it's important that you understand their motivation. So I'm going to load up this video. Just stay professionals. And we've been looking at the Freedom Funnel, put together to help you find the freedom you need in your career to have the life you intend to have. And we looked at client to contract, that section of the funnel where you're helping your clients get into contracts. And this week I want to talk to you about sellers in regard to client to contract. Well, let's consider the same question we always consider. What's their motivation? Fortunately, sellers know the answer to this question. You don't just up and sell your house without a really good reason, and all sellers want the same things. The most money they can get in the shortest amount of time they can get it with the least amount of hassle. But there's other more personal reasons. And if you're selling your house, you're going to understand your personal reasons as well. Maybe you've got another child on the way, or there's a new job in another area, or you've lost a job and can't afford it anymore. Maybe the marriage is ending. Maybe the kids are grown and the house is more than you want now. Or maybe you're cashing out your investments. There are a lot of possible answers as to why people are selling, but fortunately sellers understand them. And you, real estate professional, need to understand them too, so you can help them achieve those goals. Okay, so yeah, they're why. It's always about them. Our job is we work for them, and we want to help them achieve their goal. So you need that list of questions, things you can be asking, to understand where they're coming from. You know, along the line of video, I want to load up one more here. The importance of selling sellers on you. So check this out. You may have heard that sellers want to work with a strong agent. It's true. They want someone that is in control and understands how to get them what they want. And you need to look and sound like you're that agent. Most of us start our career working more with buyers. And if we're good at it, we learn to be intuitive and flexible with them. We help them understand themselves through the journey of shopping and closing on a home. But that intuitive, flexible approach doesn't work with sellers. It worked on buyers, because they wanted to feel as though things went as they envisioned them going in their buying adventure. Sellers want no part of adventure. They don't want intuitive and flexible. They want systematic and sure. And this one point here is why most agents are not good at both the seller side and the buyer side. It's hard to be touchy and feely with buyers one minute and cold and calculated with sellers the next, but that's the job. And you need to have put in the background grind of creating a selling system and the rock and roll riffs that communicate it wonderfully. Let them know your system to sell their home includes prepping, staging, pricing, marketing, and negotiating the sale of their home so they take the maximum amount of money with them when they leave. Let them know you won't let them leave their money on the table when they close. Let them know you can help them prep their home for maximizing their sale and stage it for a quick sale. Show them you have a clearly thought out and well articulated plan to market it with the widest exposure so that they have that you have the heartbeat of the market to be able to find that sweet spot of a price point that sells it fast, because days on market are their enemy. You don't want them to leave money behind when they move, because underpricing it sells it fast but loses them money. And let them know that you'll negotiate their deal as if it were your own.
So you heard a couple of those rock and roll riffs. I'd like to talk about how able to just rattle off some phrases there to instill confidence. Part of your job is a large part of your job is what comes out of here and how it comes out. Does it come out like you mean it? Do you hit those chords and play that tune, that rock and roll riff with the energy that it deserves? Well, that's part of what it is to instill confidence in the seller, in you. So, but I want to load up this presentation, this little slide presentation, and let's have a look at some of what goes into doing a great job with sellers. In the same way we're talking about buyers, giving them an overview of the process so they can see that you know where you're taking them and they can have confidence in you. And so let's just talk about that a little bit here. Sellers all have the same three things they want: the highest price in the least amount of time with the least amount of hassle. And it's your job to let them know that you feel them on that. They need to feel you on delivering your promise to deliver that. But in addition, they have another why, as I was talking about in that other video, something else that you want to take it even deeper than what's true of all of them to what's true of them in particular. One way to deliver on the least hassle is to provide a great overview of the process and communicate early and often. Lack of communication is the seller's number one complaint about their agent. Survey after survey after survey confirm on the seller side of the transaction that they feel like their agent listed it and then they didn't really hear from them much after that. Well, you're going to set a tone early, communicating the overview, and you're going to stay in communication at least weekly, probably more often than that, but you're going to need processes to do that. I'm more interested in talking about the overview in this particular segment. We'll get to the processes in a little another time. Start communicating right away and use an overview to start. The selling process can be thought of in 10 phases. The first one is the market analysis, often called a CMA, a comparative market analysis. And if you do a great job with that, every one of these phases, you need to be an expert and you need to have your rock and roll riffs and you need to be able to communicate well. But just getting the overview, let them know. There's a market analysis. There's a property assessment, meaning their home in particular inside of that market, because their home's going to sell in some range depending on the quality of their home. The paperwork, that's where you actually list the house. The property prep, right? So getting the house ready for sale. I walked through a house, it was yesterday, and it's a really beautiful home. They spent a lot of money fixing it up nicely. But as I walked up to the property to talk to them about selling it, I was looking at some really nice flowers popping in the garden, but also being choked out by crabgrass looking stuff. And I told them, this house isn't ready for sale. Then I walked in, and from the front door, you can see out through the back of the house into the backyard and the garage, the edge of the garage. From the front door, you can see the edge of the garage. And I could see stuff growing out of the gutters in the garage. And I pointed out that needs to be cleaned out. And then the home is beautiful, but it's not really ready for sale, right? They don't have a lot of money to spend over there, but they have a little time, a little work, a little sweat now will pay off in the big time at the closing table. And there was a piece of furniture that was kind of blocking the flow. And I just let them know we're going to need to move that. The point is, phase number 4 has a lot of prep, okay? And this one was very little in comparison to most. Anyway, phase number 5 is when they're actually on market. The listing goes live, and your marketing goes live, and they're on market. So they'll be having showings, and that be important to keep it show ready. That's number 6, where there's showings. Number 7 is when they've gotten an offer and there's negotiating. Number 8 is the contract to close period. And I remember I told you last time the pins and needles period. Well, sellers, but in addition, for the seller side, they need to be getting ready to move. And so moving is number 9, and then closing is number 10. Market analysis likely happens at least in part before you've seen the property. Make sure to pull the public records, look for old listings on the property in question, ask about improvements, find out all the relevant market activity. And the reason you're pulling the public records often is so you're not comparing their little 3-bedroom bungalow to some other McMansion in the neighborhood, right? You need to understand the square footage you're working with, and so on and so forth. So pull those public records. And then you find the relevant market activity. There's some great tools for that we'll get into. Property assessment happens once you have the chance to see the property and walk through it. Ask about the age of the roof, the furnace, the AC, the windows, appliances, and what recent updates they've done. You want to get a sense of how up to date this is. All of this matters on the pricing and the appraisal as well. So you need to understand the updates. Take the entire property into account, including landscaping, etc. I like to call it a property assessment 360. And I even start driving up the block, because how's the neighbor, right? I had a listing recently that didn't get quite as much as it probably should have. And one of the main reasons was the neighbor next door. And the guy selling, he kept telling me, he's the best neighbor in the world. But he doesn't really keep up his property. His backyard is always junky and full of stuff, and the old camper and all that kind of stuff. Well, it probably cost my client money. Now, an aggressive seller might go, hey, George, hey, I got a little extra time this weekend. How about we get over there and do a few things around the backyard, just you and I, buddy? Hey, when it's your money on the table, you might look at it. But the point is, you need to take into account in your property assessment a 360-degree look at this property. As you're approaching it up the street, are the trash cans on the side where they're visible? Is there, kids' toy? I went to this house yesterday, as I mentioned. The garden hose is laying kind of willy-nilly in the driveway. Let's get a whole perspective, right? So anyway, it's a skill. You'll get used to it. And now comes the paperwork. We're into the next phase. Know it upside down. In the old days, we are always delivering this in person. And the idea when I say know it upside down was you were sitting across the table and you could take them through the paperwork literally upside down. Know it upside down and backwards so you can explain and answer any questions they may have. Make sure you have all the completed paperwork in hand. And there's checklists to help you understand what you need to have. So don't panic if you don't know today. But the point is, know the paperwork. Nothing kills confidence in terms of your seller and your relationship with them. Nothing will kill their confidence in you more than you don't really know what this paperwork says. So when they ask you, what's this? You go, I don't know. Let me see. And you're trying to figure it out in front of them. Yeah, no. Know it before you get there. Have it down cold. After you have the signed paperwork, prepping the home for sale begins. That means repairs as needed, decluttering, packing, garage sale, storage, donations, trash, right? Getting rid of things, deep cleaning, the pictures, the marketing prep, and more. But about the decluttering, just have a few tricks of the trade ready to go. Closets, for instance. 50% of the stuff in every closet needs to go away. If it gets boxed up, fine, because it's going to the next house, perfect, whatever. That's fine, but it needs to get out of that closet. We're selling a fantasy, and we're telling the people we're selling the fantasy of a spacious closet that isn't jammed full of junk. So when the buyer comes through, they go, "Oh, this is nice. I like this property because look how nice this closet." Now, as soon as they move in, they're going to jam those closets full of their junk, and it'll never look this good again. But we're selling them. So we're helping people recognize what it takes. Now, in terms of prepping a home, I've gone so far as to take the seller to other listings that they'll be competing with, or even if they're not competing with that listings, because that listing's maybe bigger or something. I'll take them where there's new construction. I'll take them where there are flippers, and I'll let them see what professional home sellers do to get the most out of their property, to get them the ideas of what we're talking about. So prepping the home is a big part of the work. And on-market phase begins when the listing is live. Your marketing plan is in full swing from internet to open house, and you've got to have it down cold. Those are the rock and roll riffs they really want to hear. Those are the all-time favorite tunes. There is, what are you going to do to get my house the best price this market will bear? Well, bang, you need and I've included in the email that this is delivered in, or the login where you found the link for this login. Some sample stuff, and some stuff you can take and use. Well, now we're generating showings, and the seller has to be on their toes, right? Keeping a home show ready is work. And you're tired, you come home, they get the mail out of the mailbox and just toss it on the table. Well, hold on, or the kitchen counter. I get it, you're still living there, but now you're stacking it neatly or taking it wherever is putting it in the basket where, you get the point. Picking up after the kids and making sure things are put away and the laundry is not just piled up somewhere. All of the above, including the smells that are happening in this house. Sight lines matter and smells matter. Lighting matters. Have it as bright and well lit as possible. So keeping a home show ready is work, and communicating to the seller is key. There'll be some feedback, but also keep the market data coming weekly. Even if there's nothing has sold or listed, let them know you're watching for closed, pending, and new action, and maybe even price reductions, right? There's another house on the market around the corner, and they didn't get their price, and now they've done a price reduction. Well, that's important data, because we want to be data driven. We're not just hunching this. We don't just have a hunch, because days on market are death for our seller, and we need to be on top of things. When an offer or offers come in, the negotiating starts. It's vital you've had great communication throughout, so they know they can trust you when the negotiations start. If you've done something to sort of sour the relationship between you and the seller, maybe you didn't have great communication, then they have a real good reason to trust you, have their best interest, you don't want anything to undermine the trust, because now they need to be able to really trust you when the negotiations start. So make sure. Striking a deal means contract to close has started, right? Once they have what we call a bottom line PA, and because the purchase agreement at the bottom has, the offer sheet comes in with a buyer signature. Once it's negotiated, the seller signs accepting the offer. And then one more place on that form, the buyer acknowledges receipt of the seller's acceptance. I know it's kind of a mouthful, but that's why we call a bottom line PA, where all the signatures are in place. Now the contract to close has started, okay? There'll be an inspection or two, and private inspections often turn up one or two things, and there may be something to renegotiate about the deal. Explain how that works up front. I'll just give you a brief explanation. We'll get into it in more specifics, but the idea here is there's a contract in place, and if the buyer is willing to risk the deal because there's something about the house that's a big enough deal, then they can come and say, Well, they could say, we want the house, no problems, whatever, loose handrail or something, I'll fix it. Don't worry about it. Take it just like it is. Or they could say after the inspection, that's it. I don't want this house. There's too many problems. And if they're inside of their contingency window, because they have an inspection period, then of course they get their earnest money deposit back and the deal's done and we're back on market, or we're calling the second best offer we had. But what I'm talking about here is negotiation. It may be the buyer says, we still want the house if and only if we get a price drop, or you make these repairs, or you help us with some seller's concessions. Well, the ball is in the seller's court at that point, and the seller can say, no, we're going back on market, or we had 3 other offers over here. You can take it or leave it. We're not renegotiating it. And you can just kill the deal at that point as a seller. But the point is, they should know all of that before it comes up, how it works, right? Explain how these things work so they know, you know where you're going. Then there's an appraisal. Once they're past the inspection, that's when now, unless it's a cash offer, cash offers don't need appraisals, but most offers are financed. And then there'll be an appraisal. So be there for your seller's appraisal. I say there, I mean at the property. And have the comps you used to price it with a list of improvements for the appraiser. Appraisers want to know, have there been any updates in the last 5 years, 15 years? How old is this kitchen? How old is that furnace? And so you want to have a list of updates, and go hog wild, come up with every update you can. Offer them as a help to the appraiser. Offer them as a help if wanted. Now, almost all appraisers should be, oh, great, thanks. You've pulled some comps and you've given me a list of updates. That actually is a shortcut for me and helps me get my job done faster. Thank you. Most appraisers are like that, especially if you've been a nice guy or gal. Be nice to these people. Don't tell them how to do their job. They really hate that. Okay? You don't want to cut the relationship by being a know-it-all. They're the professional appraiser. You're the professional real estate agent. Okay? All right. So past the appraisal, it's moving prep time, and you want to be of help to your client because they've got a big job of moving. I have a friend who's a real estate broker, and kind of a tagline he uses is, let me take all the stress out of selling. And I just look him in. I just look him in the eye and say, stop lying to people. You can't take all the stress out of selling and moving. Moving's stressful, but it is our job to mitigate and to limit the amount of stress as best we can. And so you'll have a checklist for moving to help people be prepared, and packing, and maybe some recommendations of local movers. And it's really important that they know you care about what they're going through, and you're there to be of help to them. It's kind of that value added, going, the extra mile for people, right? Explain the buyer's lenders working toward a clear to close during this period, and they need to be working toward a clear and clean house. Clear meaning moved out, right? So when closing day comes, the buyer will do a final walkthrough, and they'll sit down at the closing table. They need to bring their ID to prove they're the person who has the right to sell this house, the keys, all of them, the garage door remotes, and anything else that's pertinent, right? Let them bring it to the closing table. Now, if they happen to have some paperwork about a warranty on the furnace or a roof or something, they don't necessarily need to bring that to the closing table. They can leave that on the kitchen counter or something but the point is, this is going to be a done deal, and we want to get the exchange of everything. They're going to get money, and this buyer is going to get possession of this house, unless it's been negotiated that there's some occupancy. But we're not going to talk about that here. So at the closing, your client needs to see your smiling face. They're likely exhausted from the process. Have a great gift for them. Something to remember the house by is nice, but it's a lot of work moving, and this whole process can be stressful. And you do everything you can to take the stress out, including being nice and upbeat and friendly at the closing, right? And take the smiling pics and make sure you know where they are going if you didn't sell them their new place. Like if they're moving out of state, you need their contact information, that kind of thing. So you want to keep up with these people. Giving them a great overview of what to expect in the beginning and showing them your faithfulness all the way will open the door to a fan. That's our goal, is that we do such a great job taking care of our clients, understanding their situation, understanding their goals, that they become a fan of ours, because fans are freely referring us to their friends and family. Okay, so that's the idea here, Seller 101. We're just talking about the importance of the overview here. So take a look at the downloads. There's a couple of great resources. The Ultimate Guide to Selling Your Home. I think it's 30-something pages long. It's really a nice resource to offer to people, to give them something in terms of giving them some overview. But also, I've put together a little marketing piece that you could use, maybe change a few things, edit it. It says Paul's marketing plan on top, so change that. There's a little bio on the back about Paul, so change that. Or even just take it as an idea, starting point. You don't need to use it. It's not a requirement, but it's something that could help you. So have a look at that. Okay, well, that's Seller 101-1. Tomorrow, we're going to have our workshop Friday morning here at the office. Or if you can't make that, some alternative time, we've been, talking to set something up. So give me a holler. Let me know if you have any questions. Tag, you're it. Go get them.